Welcome to this tutorial on how to add multiple trend lines to the same set of data. We're looking specifically at velocities for different objects. So I'm going to take the existing graph for the skydiver and I'm going to put it into a new tab. Right? I'm going to create a new tab. And this new tab is going to have all of the objects represented. So now I'm going to paste that graph in there. And the first thing I want to do is I want to change the title because it's going to not just be the skydiver, right? It's going to be all the objects. So maybe terminal velocities of objects in air, right? Because they're all falling through air. But I want to compare them to each other. Okay, let's add another object. I go to select data, and you see a box here, and it shows you how many trend lines are represented on this graph. You see there's only one series, which is the skydiver one. I'm going to rename it more simply to skydiver. I'm going to add a second one, right? And this is going to be the parachute one. And so I need to tell Excel, hey, Excel, where are the X values for this second trend, right? So I click this button right here. And now Excel is waiting for me to tell where the data is. So I go to parachute, right? Because I'm graphing parachute data. So I go to the parachute tab. And I say, hey, Excel, guess what? My time data for the parachute is right here in this parachute tab, A5 through A95. And then we click that button again right there, and it takes us back to this box. Now notice the syntax here, right? It has simply the name of the tab, separated by an exclamation point, and then the cell values where the data is, right? A5 through A95. I can do the same thing for the Y values. Make sure that this is not in there, right? Delete that. And then go back to the parachute tab and highlight B5 through B95 because that is the velocity data for the parachute. Now notice that it's dragging a little bit slowly, right? I find this a little bit tedious. So I'm going to show you a different way to do the feather data. But let's take a look at the parachute data, right? You see the identical syntax except there is the B and B here, right? So let's see what that looks like. Excellent. We now have two trend lines, right, for two different objects. So let me show you that quicker way of adding a third series. So add a third, right? This will be for the feather. And now I'm just going to use that syntax, right? I'm say equals feather. That's the name of the spreadsheet I want it to look at. And then $A $95 colon, oops, 5. Remember, in each spreadsheet, the data is in the same location. So, and then I can just copy that and put it in the Y values and just change the A column to the B column. All right, let's make sure that that's graphing. You can see without even clicking out of the dialog box that I now have three trend lines. Now I can add my fourth, which will be my bullet, and just right, I've still got that same thing in my clipboard, so I just click paste. You got to be careful not to when you change the name of the tab that you're looking at, not to erase the exclamation point, which separates the tab name from the data. All right, so I want that for my bullet, and then just change the A's to B's from time to velocity, and let's see if we don't get a fourth trend line. So you can see the graph here on the left has 4 trend lines now, just exactly like we want. The last thing we need to do is you can see that the bullet and the skydiver ran for much longer time, so we can actually change that by changing the time increments in the original spreadsheet. So I'm going to click out of this dialog box. I'm going to go back to skydiver, and instead of doing 0.5 second increments, I'm going to do 0.25. And again, you see the power of the way that you set the spreadsheet up, right? Changing one value, everything ripples through, right? Let's go back here now. Look how much for less. See, that graph immediately changed. Now it's only running for like, 22.5 seconds. I'm going to do the same thing to the bullet data, right? Because I don't want it to run as long. So instead of 0.5, maybe we could have it run for like 0.2 and 0.2 second time increments. Let's see what that looks like. All right, so that's scaled pretty well there, right? I mean, you could adjust the skydiver a little bit more. But now anyway, now we can see all four of them a little bit. We don't want to go any shorter than 20 seconds for the bullet because we want to see, we want the graph to show how it flattens out to a terminal velocity. The last thing to do is to make sure that the graph prints appropriately for the size in your notebook. So you can go to print, and you can see here that the graph is quite large, right? It's going off the page. So cancel. And the nice thing now is that Excel shows you where the page boundary is, right, with this blue dotted line, and then you can just resize that to about half the width of that. And that should make it about the right size for you. That's a good size. There you go. Multiple trend lines in Excel.